With things picking up in the most recent chapters of One Piece, and the potential of some battles popping off soon, I was really thinking about 3 characters in particular that might be involved going forward in the story. I know that they'll be involved, but it might happen sooner than we think. The last chapter we got Shanks and Kid coming back, so I'm hoping that we get a little bit more information about Kobe, Garp, and Smoker, because realistically they could all be coming into the story at any moment in any chapter going forward. We know that Kobe got captured by the Blackbeard pirates, so he's somewhere with them, and we know that Garp and Smoker are probably going to get involved either in the action on Egghead or actually going to save Kobe. So story-wise, again, this could happen at any moment. I think it'll happen honestly, or we'll at least see one of these characters in the next 2 or 3 chapters after the break. So why am I so interested in these characters going forward, especially with all the crazy stuff happening on Egghead right now? And I know that this has been talked about a lot in the community, but I'm still going to talk about it. To me, it seems like these 3 characters were all basically cut from the same cloth, or are all kind of supposed to be somewhat related to each other as far as personality and storyline goes. Garp is the hero of the Marines, Kobe is the hero of the Rocky Port incident, and up until he ran into Luffy and dipped to go try to chase him, Smoker was the man in his city. I also think they have commonalities in that they don't believe in absolute justice. And although Smoker does say he hates pirates, the 3 of them have worked together with pirates and been able to come to pretty good resolutions while working with pirates. One Piece is a series where we like to compare, and they're often, older, more experienced characters that are mentors for younger characters who are kind of doing the same thing, a la, Rayleigh's compared to Zoro, Luffy's compared to Gold Roger, etc, etc. This has been talked about in the community, but I think Smoker and Kobe can both be compared to Garp for a lot of reasons. Some of them I just mentioned, and also some that, you know what, I'm not even going to bother mentioning. You kind of get what I'm saying, and I'm not going to beat the dead horse because I know there are a bunch of videos on the internet that you can watch and talk about that. But what I do want to talk about is more perception versus reality. In order to do that, I'm going to go all the way back to Alabasta. Some of the biggest dramatic irony that we get in One Piece is obviously we know that Luffy's good, but everyone thinks he's bad. Alabasta is one of the first early examples of that, and really where we saw the world government trying to cover something up that he did that was good. Well, they looked at Smoker and said, oh, this is the guy who's going to be the hero. We're going to give him a promotion. We're going to pump it out to the world that he saved Alabasta, not make mention of Luffy. Obviously, it's their agenda. They don't want pirates to be good. They want them to be bad. But it's interesting that Smoker, again, was given that title as being the hero in that situation. And hell, you could say that Tashigi deserves that title more. So you probably already kind of know what I'm going to say. If you look at Kobe, we don't really know much about the Rocky Port incident. We've gotten little tidbits of information, but we really don't know too much. We also know that Trafalgar Law, who we know is crazy OP, was involved in that incident, and Blackbeard was involved in that incident. And somehow, Kobe was able to stop a fight between 2 of the strongest pirates that we know, and was named the hero. But that's just about all we know. We know so little that if you went and checked the wiki right now, there's about like 2 sentences and that's it. And yeah, this gets mentioned here and there. We did recently hear about this from Blackbeard, but again, not that much information. And guess what? The same can kind of be said for God Valley too. Interestingly enough, this also happened against 2 of the strongest pirate groups in the world at that time. But in this scenario, we do have confirmation that Garp and Roger worked together to win. And we also know that the world government used Garp as the overall hero and overshadowed and didn't even mention the fact that the Roger Pirates helped him. So to the world, Garp was the overall hero that saved everything. The crazier part is that he's a hero for a war in a place that people didn't know existed, but that's neither here nor there. What I'm getting at is this. Do I think that any of the 3 characters that I listed, Garp, Kobe, or Smoker, are weak? No, I don't. I think they're very strong. I think they're stronger than most characters in One Piece. However, do I think that they're Yonko level? Probably not. So this is less of a theory, more of an observation, and mixed in with a bunch of headcanon. Based on what we know about Smoker's involvement in Alabasta and how he really was just focusing on saving civilians and not really focusing on taking down all the heavy hitters, and that again, he got the credit for the whole thing, which yes, he did say that he didn't want the credit, and he personally did recognize that Luffy had so much to do with the fact that that country survived. But again, at the end of the day, he was paraded around as a hero and told he had to do that. Again, there have already been parallels made between Smoker, Garp, and Kobe, so that really got me thinking about Garp specifically. So I'm not going to talk too much about Kobe. Again, we don't really know much about him, even though everyone knows who he is and we know that he's been doing great things and moving up the ranks in the Marines. We really don't know much about Kobe, to be honest. And what you can tell from the title of this video, this is going to be all about Garp. So I set the table, I'm just going to say it. What if Garp ain't that dude? What if he's just not that guy? There's a slight, now again, I think he's strong, but there's a slight possibility that Garp was labeled a hero, and he did a lot of the things that maybe Smoker did in the situation. We know that Shanks was found at God Valley, that's been confirmed. And although we don't know much about the place, we can kind of assume that there are at least people that lived there and inhabited the place. And even if they didn't live there, they were just people there. That's probably how Shanks was left there. Who knows? Again, that could be totally wrong, but we do know that Garp and Roger formed their alliance to protect the world nobles on the island, so it is confirmed that people are there. We can kind of infer from Garp's relationship with the world government and how he doesn't like the celestial dragons and how he interacts with normal people on a regular basis. I do think that he does value civilian life. And obviously he's related to Luffy, and yes, I know that a lot of characters that are related don't necessarily show the same values a la Sanji and his family. But I do think that Garp and Luffy probably share a similar sentiment about protecting people and making sure that regular people don't get hurt. So it's not really hard for me to think that Garp would potentially go out of his way to try to help people if there were people still on God Valley when the battle was going on. So while I do think that Garp had a role to play in actually fighting the Rocks Pirates, I don't know how big that role was. News in the One Piece world is entertainment. That can mean a lot of things, but what I think it does confirm is that obviously it can be manipulated. And Garp's prominence in the war very easily could have been. Although now we know that Roger wasn't Joy Boy and wasn't going to end up being the person to change the world, at the time that God Valley happened, he was basically what Luffy is now to the story. And so if we look at where the story's heading, and it's really heading towards Luffy and Blackbeard's crew clashing, and those being kind of two of the strongest pirate crews, the speculation in the community and amongst a lot of people is what kind of matchups the Straw Hats would have against the Blackbeard Pirates. Well, I think the same thing would probably be true if we were talking about the Roger Pirates going up against Rocks Pirates. We don't know too much about the peripheral members of both crews, but we do know the heavy hitters, and there are some matchups there that would make a lot of sense. And the conversation has always really been, well, it's the Rogers heavy hitters plus Garp versus them, and that kind of evens things out a bit. But in order for you to be the king of the pirates, I don't think that you have to be relying on Navy help and Marine help. It would make a lot more sense to me if Roger's crew was just built like Luffy's crew, because again, the parallels between those characters, and look at Shanks and his crew and how he built his crew. So I really do think that Roger's crew could probably take on Rocks by themselves, or at least not needing the help if it wasn't there. And I know the current Yonko were already on Rocks' crew, but they were young, they were learning, they were also not operating as a team. And there's a lot of times, not to drag in sports, but just because you have the most talent on the roster does not mean you're going to win the championship. To bring in sports, I think the Rocks Pirates are a lot closer to the 2021/2 Brooklyn Nets than they are to the Golden State Warriors. Just because you have Harden, Kyrie, and Durant doesn't mean you're winning anything. And if we learned anything from Luffy's travel, you need a lot of good teamwork and a really strong team to be able to achieve your dreams. So again, headcanon here, but for Roger to become the king of the pirates, his crew had to be dumb strong, and they had to work together. What we've already seen from some of the Yonko battles is that you need advanced Conquerors hockey to really make a dent and really to be amongst the biggest and strongest fighters in the world. And Garp doesn't even have Conquerors hockey confirmed yet. In all likelihood, he does have it, but again, it hasn't been confirmed, so we can't say for sure that he does. And again, it runs in the family, so chances are he has it. But if he didn't have it, I find it very hard to believe that he was going up against confirmed Conquerors hockey users that we know of. Maybe they didn't have it at the time or couldn't control it at the time, but we know that on the Rocks Pirates, they had Conquerors hockey users. I don't know how much Garp could do if he doesn't have Conquerors hockey at all. So this far in the video, you're probably getting the gist. I think that Garp being the hero of the Marines is more smoke and mirrors than a smoking gun. Anyways, the point being, I don't know how strong Garp is, and I don't know if his title is actually true or not. So this is the part in the video where I get to theorize and make an ass of myself. So right off the bat, I don't think that Garp was just a bystander. In my head, how I see God Valley is that Rocks and his pirates took it over, and then Garp showed up to try to take it back, and at some point Roger and his friends also pulled up to try to take it back, or something along those lines. Again, like, we don't know too much, but that's kind of how I view, and at least in my head, the situation going down. And looking at the Rocks Pirates, there are a couple matchups that I do think would work well with Garp. So basically, outside of Rocks himself, who Sengoku said was the biggest rival to Roger back in the day, I don't think Garp was fighting Rocks Dizabek. But outside of him, there are some people that I think he could have fought. The ones that I think are more in Garp's range / Garp isn't too strong for is going to be Whitebeard, Shiki, Big Mom, and Kaido. So the least likely scenario to me is that Garp fought Whitebeard. My reasoning for that is I think at the time of this incident, Whitebeard was probably like the second strongest person on the crew. He was probably stronger than Big Mom and Kaido at that time. Another thing too is I think the relationship between him and Rayleigh and just their fighting styles in general lend more towards those two characters fighting on God Valley. The same could be said for Roger, but again, I think the leaders are fighting each other. So for me, I think Whitebeard is just out. I don't think Garp was battling him. But the next couple do get interesting. So right now, to recap, I have Roger fighting Rox, and I have Rayleigh fighting Whitebeard. Before I get to Shiki, which I think is the more interesting case, I'll just say that although I think the power level would be there for Garp to be fighting either Kaido or Big Mom, I just don't think that there's enough between them that would link them in the story. I don't know of any beefs. I think Big Mom definitely would have said something to Luffy about Garp. She had ample time to bring up God Valley when she was talking to him on Fishman Island over the phone, or when he went to Whole Cake Island. Same goes for Kaido. He could have just been like, yo, Luffy, your grandfather handed me this massive L, and now I want to get revenge on you. He didn't really say that. And yeah, I get that might be a little hard to write into the dialogue of the story, but we already had Chinjao's Patrick Star looking ass complaining about this, so it is likely that if Garp fought one of those two, they would have some sort of beef against him and would bring it up against Luffy, because that's usually how villains work in this story. The real interesting one to me though is Shiki, because we do know that they have a history together. Shiki had his own Marineford incident and actually critically injured Garp, but still took the L. So I really do think that if Garp was fighting anyone big on the island, it's probably Shiki. But there is one thing that I do think also could have happened. We don't know much about the Roger Pirates, but we do know about one of their other characters that isn't Rayleigh, and that's Scopper Gabon. We know that he was strong enough to at least clash with and fight Odin, so he is a strong character, at least in that regard. We do know that he has some sort of strength. So it is very possible that he is the third in command for the Roger Pirates. There could be other people. He could not be the third in command, but if he was the third in command, it is possible that he probably could have fought Shiki as well. Because again, at the time of God Valley, I do think that the order of at least strength, or that whatever the Rox Pirates used to determine kind of their hierarchy, that it would be Rox, Whitebeard, and Shiki as like the top three. So similar to the Straw Hats and how Zoro and Sanji fight usually the wings of the other pirate crew, that very well could have happened here at God Valley too. So again, Garp could have fought Shiki, Scopper Gabon could have fought Shiki, but I actually think that Scopper fought something else, because I am going to take the bait and this would be a little bit more fun, at least for me and as a fan. Given that Scopper clashed with Odin and that Odin gave Kaido his massive scar, I would kind of love for Scopper to be the one that was fighting Kaido on God Valley. I think that would just be cool parallels to other parts in the story, and it's Oda, it's One Piece, sometimes he does like to make things kind of cool like that, so I could very well see that happening, and honestly, I do think that's what happened. Other than the 5 Rox Pirates that I've already mentioned, there are a few more. We got Miss Buckingham Stussy, who honestly I don't think Garp would have fought. I think Crocus kind of lines up better for that fight. We don't know much about Wang Zhe and his strength, but he was able to capture and take a hold of Hachinosu for a really long time, so he's probably really strong. But in real life, Wang Zhe was like an arms dealer, so I assume that there was some sort of sniper or something that was on the Roger Pirates that dealt with him. I'm thinking of him more as like a sniper. We also got Captain John and Silver Axe. We know about Captain John's treasure. I don't know too much about his strength, and to be honest, I don't think Garp's going to be fighting like the 8th man down the roster type of thing. I think if Garp's fighting someone, they'll probably be in like the top 5. Because again, I don't think Garp is weak. I just think he's getting way more credit for God Valley than he deserves. So yeah, I really think that Garp fought Shiki in his battle on God Valley. And I also think that it really was the Roger Pirates that won it. That's an obvious statement. I think everyone kind of knows that Garp would have been screwed on his own, but I really do think that a lot of the esteem that we hold Garp in is based off of that being the hero of the Marines, and I don't know how accurate that title is. Again, I don't think he's weak. He was definitely strong enough to be an admiral, which means he's probably one of like the top like 10 to 15 characters in terms of strength. So to answer my question, is Garp that dude? I think he's way more of a Damian Lillard than he is a Steph Curry. That being, he's a stud. He's clearly one of the best people out there, but he's not going to be able to take the team and drag him to the ship on his own. He's got to get help. He's Pippen to Rogers Jordan. And hey, I'd take that any day of the week and twice when the Bulls are playing. But that does kind of put a ceiling on his impact and what he can do going forward in the story. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video. This has really just been me info dumping and trying to wrap my head around this idea. I've been thinking about this a little bit, but especially with break week coming up, I figured this would be a perfect time to just talk about it. And again, this is a mix of my headcanon and just what I would like to see happen. I did pull in real research and facts about the stuff, but again, a lot of this is just headcanon and me just having fun with it. But if you have a different idea about God Valley or a different idea about Garp, I would love to hear it too. Definitely let me know in the comments what your thoughts on the situation are and what your thoughts about Garp are. Again, I'm not trying to be toxic. I'm not trying to start beef. I just think that Garp is viewed in a little bit different way than he actually is. But as always, I appreciate you for stopping by. I appreciate you for spending these past few minutes with me. Go chase your dreams. You deserve it. You don't need to prove anything to anyone except yourself. Go live your dreams, live your truth. This has been Exist, and I'm out.